Today we are in Cambridge, England, a quick impressionist painting which I think is very good for beginners in transparent watercolor. I've done a pencil drawing of the main structures of the buildings and the bridge, etc. And then I've started with a wash here and there with clear water, with little gaps. And then with a larger brush, I've come in with some Winsor blue, painting the areas mainly where there has been no water wash, so that I can fuse the two together and end up hopefully with nice fluffy edges for the clouds. And you'll see, as in other demonstrations, tutorials, that I would bring the pigment over the white areas and fuse them together. You will see in other tutorials as well, I encourage you to look at them, that there are other methods you can use, occasionally using a little bit of good strong tissue to soften the edges of clouds. But there we go, so quite simple, just neatening up. You can use something like a number 10 or number 12 size brush at this stage of the painting. And as I said, it's quick, impressionistic. It's not meant to be a long, laborious tutorial. It only lasts 11 minutes in total. So hopefully it would be good for people to be able to see all the way through to the end. And materials that I use are mentioned in the links, but I've mentioned Winsor Blue. I'm using Pro Art brushes as well as Utrecht brushes, and now I'm using some yellow ochre for the side of the buildings. And you can use a light red or alizarin crimson when we get to those stages later to get your brown colours, etc., for brickwork and so forth. And a quick mention of my art sites, billholcombart.etsy.com is one of them, and I encourage you to please have a look at those, because you can order prints of my artwork at extremely reasonable prices, including postage. And continue with the building. We've got a large tree on the side of the canal, which you'll see us painting later, obscuring part of that building. If we were doing a high street or something like that, it'd be an extremely long tutorial with massive amounts of fine detail. So this is a good location. The most difficult part architecturally, of course, is the bridge that goes across the river, and we'll come to that later. So for this color, I've mixed a combination of blue with a tiny amount of red, so that it's a light brown color. And you'll see occasionally in my tutorials, I do suggest that to speed up the process, you can use a hairdryer, as we did there. So we're coming down to that part of the building, completed, where it comes to the tree. And then for the bridge, this yellowish wash. Please remember to like and subscribe, because you'll be notified of future videos, and it's all free. So do your yellow wash, and like I said, it's impressionistic, so it's quick painting. We're not aiming for massively accurate structure, although we've done enough in the pencil drawing to make it convincing, but it wouldn't stand up to measurements with a ruler. But it tells a story, and that is often the case with impressionist transparent watercolor type painting. You're telling enough in the painting for a story, and people can make up the rest in their minds, and you can end up with a convincing result. So we're using that darker color for cappings and things of that nature, where we have variation in the structure. and little areas where in the architecture there are little overhangs and things of that nature where it's darker underneath. And now in the bridge section, towards the underside of the bridge section, you will see that later on we'll darken that even more. Now, as is often the case in transparent watercolor painting, you lay down a ground wash first of all, an underpainting if you like. And I've done that with the yellows, a little bit of Windsor yellow, some yellow ochre mixed in, a variation. As you can see, it's quite varied. And I've let that dry and used a hairdryer. And then I've mixed up my darker green color, and I'm using the scraping technique with the side of the brush. You can use varied brushes here for different degrees of detail, but maybe a number 6, or you might go up to a number 8 or 10, and just scrape in that darker color, leaving gaps here, there, everywhere where the ground color is shining through, because that will be light catching the various aspects of the trees and bushes. And you can use a much smaller brush for edges of the trees like this, for detail of different limbs and different clumps of leaves and so forth coming from the edge of bushes and trees. Continue with that. I will not show every single aspect of that because this is a very quick tutorial, just 11 minutes as I mentioned. But you can see that technique was applied to that whole left hand side and for the distant trees that you can see above the bridge area. Now for the water in the river, we're laying down a wash of water. There's a little bit of tiny amount of pigment on this brush, but it doesn't matter because it's going to be green anyway. So we lay that down, and then whilst that's wet, we do our wet in wet again. We've got a green color, start from the bottom this time and work up. The reason for that is we want the distance to be lighter on this occasion. So we're starting from the bottom and working up. The trickiest part here is avoiding the punt boat, the people in that boat, and the boat itself, and just having to paint around those. That's the hardest part of this. I think I'm using 10 or 12 at this stage, which is a sable brush but a nice point to it, which enables me to come around the figures and the boat. And then that wash is nearly done, so whilst it's wet, we darken still. Because you see, as I've mentioned quite a few times in different tutorials, that the paints do lighten much more once they dry. So don't be afraid if you think, oh, maybe that's too strong or whatever. Most of the time, you'll see it works out fine because it lightens a lot more. But it's always easier, having said that, it's always easier to start lighter and darken. If you massively go much too dark in your pigment to start with, then that becomes tricky, and there are many less options to try to lighten it up, although in some circumstances it's possible. So continuing with that, and then once this is dried, the water, you'll see that I have used a flat brush and I've laid down variations and ripples and so forth in the water, a little bit of variation of light green, dark green, grey colour here, there. And under the bridge, we've darkened that, and now we're dealing with the figures in the punt boat and using a small brush for those. That won't take too long. Do try to look at some of my many other videos that you'll see on our site. There are quite a few now, and many of them are helping beginners, and I really wish I had this tool available to me with these free videos when I was first learning watercolor painting over 40 years ago, because I know I would have made much more rapid progress. So do like and subscribe, because you'll be notified of them all. And they're all free. Can't beat free. So carry on with the figures. As mentioned earlier, you drew them in with light pencil. And when you use a pencil, you just press hard enough to give the detail, but not too much. And there we are. We've got a finished painting, a quick one, Cambridge, and in England, impressionistic painting that won't take you too long, and I highly recommend you try this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.